the Josh Allen era, right? The Josh Allen era. It's kind of crazy to think it's already been, this amount of years, and it's been what, we're going into year 8, I believe, now of Josh Allen. It's kind of crazy to think about, right? Or is it year 8 or is it
I think 7.
7? Yes, year 7. But it's kind of crazy to think about, right? It's crazy to think that he's already been here for this long, and we've seen these many seasons of him, and we've been through so much with him at the helm so far. So I just kind of want to get your thoughts on the Allen era. You guys can obviously let us know in the comments here what you guys are thinking. I'm going to be curious to see how you guys react to some of these questions. So I'm just going to start it off with a real kind of easy one of what was Josh Allen's best year? And this kind of goes into the next one as well, which I'll just kind of give you guys as well, what also was the Bills' best year with Josh Allen? So what do you think? We'll start with you, Scott. Scott, what do you think the best year of Josh Allen was and the best year of the Bills was?
Well, hopefully it's next year. But I would say I think Josh Allen's best year was 2020. And I think part of that might be where, not to say it came out of nowhere, but I think the level at which he played and the Bills going 13-3 just caught a lot of people by surprise. Because 2019, they were an okay team. Like, they made the playoffs. They were a questionable call away from maybe beating Houston. In overtime there, they had a 16-0 lead, which you don't have to get into. But like they were like a team that, they played hard on defense. Josh Allen took care of the ball a little bit, made a couple throws here and there that you're like, okay, like I see what we're seeing. He was running. We had Frank Gore, rookie Motor Singletary. Like we had a good running game, and it was kind of like we won with kind of like a ground and pound defensive mentality. Flip it over to 2020, and we're winning because Josh Allen's throwing for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns in week 2 against the Dolphins. And it's like, wow, like there was the big debate of like, is it a problem he hasn't thrown for 300 yards yet? And then he did it in week 1 against the Jets, threw for 400 in week 2 against the Dolphins, and he kind of never stopped. And his interception numbers were pretty down. Like, he didn't throw a pick until that Rams game in week 4 where Tyler Kroft caught the ball, but then somehow the Rams guy came out with it and it was an interception. So I think 2020 was his best year, and I think that's where he set most of his career highs as well. But just like that team was just so much fun to watch all year long. Like, their losses, you can still remember like the Hail Murray game, which was like such a fluke. I think that was Josh Allen's best year, and I think that maybe just because, like I said, it kind of wasn't expected. We thought he would take a jump, but we didn't think he would go from like middle of the road quarterback to the top 2 or 3 guy that he is now. But I think the Bills' best team with Josh Allen was 2021. I know they kind of had like a slow middle part to the season, but they got red hot at the end. They had the perfect game against the Patriots, that Chiefs game, which, to this day, I'm still not over. And you can't convince me that if some of the coaching things we talked about, they just play out those last 13 seconds differently, that team doesn't win the Super Bowl. So I think 2020, Josh Allen's best season individually, but 2021, I think, is the best team that the Bills had with Josh. I think that was the year for them for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to say 2021 was Josh Allen's best year and the Bills' best year, and here's why. Josh Allen ran for almost 900 yards in 2021, only 566 in 2020. He did have more touchdowns, 9 in 2020 than he did in 2021 with 6. Overall, he had the same number of touchdowns passing and rushing combined in both years, and he had less fumbles. Now, he did have a couple more interceptions in 2021. Obviously, his best ratio was 2020. His passing yards were a little bit higher in 2020, but overall, just the player, that team in 2021 was so good because of him, and I just feel like his best year was just 2021. That whole team just had everything going for him. Like you mentioned, the perfect game against New England. And then, I'm like checking my bank account. I've got enough money for the AFC Championship game tickets to hit. I'm ready to go. I said, all right, we're hosting the AFC Championship game in Buffalo. There's only 13 seconds left. My stomach was just a mess. And obviously we know what happened. So, I agree the Bills' best season 100% was 2021, and I'm going to say that was also Josh Allen's best year, although there were some statistics that will say a few more yards here and whatnot, but also overall I think with his running game and really took off in 2021 with the nearly 900 yards rushing and less fumbles. So just as a whole, I think he graded out in PFF's grading system anyway. A little bit better in 2021 as well. So yeah, I think 2021 for me is going to be the better year, and it's like the year that's the one that got away, right? That's like, man, we don't know necessarily because we also, in 2020 lost in the AFC Championship game itself. So that's kind of, but those 2 years, man, coming out with 0 Super Bowls is really tough to swallow because you just think you could have had 2 there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to agree with Scott on this one when it comes to both, but I do want to just bring up a little bit. I do think 2022, though, was the best team on paper. On paper, to start week one, that was the best team, but then you had Von Miller go down in the middle of the season. You had Trey White still not the same, right? And that just was also then the Damar Hamlin year. It was a tough mental year for this team. So I think if that team stays healthy, doesn't have to go through as much as it did throughout the entire season, it had Dawson Knox, his brother Pat, like it was just such an emotional team. I think if they could stay healthy and it's kind of one of those seasons that they don't have to deal with as much, I think maybe they're physically and mentally more prepared for the playoffs and more prepared for that Bengals game. Obviously, it didn't go well in that playoff game at all, but that team, I think, on paper might have been the best Bills team. When it comes to, though, the best season they had, obviously regular season, I think, was 2020. But when you look at, like Scott said, the transition after that, they struggled there, and just how they went into the playoffs, man, that team was on a mission, and it was, like we said, 13 seconds away from being able to get to that AFC Championship game. And I think a lot of people in the NFL and a lot of Bills fans thought that they were not going to be stopped unless by Kansas City, and obviously they were, unfortunately. But yeah, so I'm going to agree with the overall sentiment of 2020 was Josh Allen's best season. Bills' best season was 2021, but I think the Bills' best team was 2022 on paper if they would have stayed healthy. Von Miller was coming out looking great. The defense looked like they were going to be able to get after the quarterback. Josh Allen looked really good. Just everything looked very good there, but we knew how that season went, and it was just an overall tough season. So I guess maybe that's my next question to you guys is if 2021, if they don't have to deal with as much, would that team maybe be that team that we look back at and say, man, that was the one that got away maybe just as much as 2021 did?
Yeah, that team was just like, it started from even like the beginning. Like Jamison Crowder got hurt in like week 6, and he was supposed to be, that slot receiver that was going to come in and be the Emmanuel Sanders from the year before. And that didn't really work out. And then like that team, like it was just such like a weird year because like there would be games like I think of like the Browns game. They had to go play in Detroit. Like they were playing home games, not even home because of the snow. They're dealing with that. Like they would just look flat like every week, but somehow they would still win. And it's like, and then it's all started to like the injuries piled up. Like you said, Von got hurt, and then obviously everything that happened with Damar, which I think just like took all of the wind out of whatever sails they had. And that team was just emotionally exhausted. Like,
was that also the year of the Matt Araiza situation as well?
Yeah. Yep, the year started with that. So like the whole year, it was just like one thing after another. And like I remember like hearing some quotes from guys in the locker room of like they were just hoping to make the Super Bowl so they could get a week off, like they could get a bye and get fresh again. So yeah, that's definitely a season that you look back on and think of what could have been, just because like the cliche of like everything that could go wrong will, but like at an astronomical level, because they had things happening that like don't happen to NFL teams. It wasn't just injuries. It was like the way guys, and obviously Damar Hamlin stuff, which is like never happened before. It hopefully never happens again, knock on wood. But yeah, definitely one that got away, and just everything that team went through, and still to go 13-3. And like, and they got maybe like screwed out of getting the 1 seed because they didn't play that game in Cincinnati. If they beat the Bengals in the playoffs, we would all had to go to Atlanta to watch them play the Chiefs. And it's like, this game should be in Buffalo. Like, it's not our fault we lost the game. But yeah, that was just a really weird year. Definitely one that, we'll look back on and be like, damn, that happened that year too. Like, it's amazing they did as well as they did.
Got any thoughts on that one, Lance, at all about the 2022 season, or should we move on to the next question here?
Yeah, for 2022, that was obviously very difficult. It's hard to really, for me, I don't really look at it and subscribe. Like, you got to roll with the punches. You got to have, like, every team has injuries. If you put every team at full strength and no injuries, like, sure, they're going to think they have the best shot at it that they would have in their franchise. And that's happened, throughout history. I'm not disagreeing that that's not true. Absolutely. It's just that you could really say that for every team. Literally, if every team stays 100% healthy and doesn't lose a guy, they're going to be a lot more competitive than they were. So it's tough to say that, just because it's so true for really every franchise. They've had a number of years where if anybody goes down there, the Patriots could have had an extra Super Bowl probably because Brady gets hurt, and stuff like that. So it's hard to really say, like, if we didn't go through, it's just that's part of the NFL seasons. Injury, you have to get, again, it's a lot about luck because you have to have luck with the guys that you have in your locker room clicking, and then you also have to have luck with injuries and have enough attrition on your team to get there at the end.